right.
Okay, well, I guess we're set for now then. So we'll call the meeting to order and just remind everybody to declare any conflict of interest that you have or that may arise during the course of the meeting. Introductions. So is Wendy, are you the only public right now?
And Matt Kaler.
I think I am the only public.
Okay, and have you in previous meetings been introduced to all of us who are on here right now?
I think so.
Okay.
Everybody looks familiar.
Wendy.
Sounds good.
Hi, Sue.
So Wendy, any public comment on anything you don't see on the agenda?
No.
Okay.
And Terry, technically, I think Matt Kaler is a member of the public. He's not on the council at the current time.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Matt.
All right, I'm just tuning in while I'm working here, so.
Do you have any comment of anything that's not on the agenda?
Nope.
Okay. Action items then, approval of the January minutes. Sue, you are our expert on minutes.
Well, I read them. I didn't see anything, so I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
I second that.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any comment, question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Any public comment, I guess, on the minutes? I was sort of asking for anybody to comment, but. Okay, so we're down to the literacy Bitterroot report.
Oh, that's just missing Dixie. Let me just see if I might have gotten a call from her.
Okay.
Maybe we just skip it and put it towards the end.
That's fine.
An issue.
Okay, so I'll let you work on seeing if she's going to be able to do that, and let's then move on to the director's report. I know Tori had it up there for a little while earlier. Does anybody need it put up again? Separate from the link she added. Okay, so comments, questions. Tori, do you want to say anything before people get into questions or comments about it?
No, I'm nothing really earth-shattering, I don't think, from my perspective. I think, I guess one thing is that we're really very much in a holding pattern right now in terms of many kind of things. And I think the shortness of the director's report reveals that. Basically, with the legislature still, we're waiting for the community college resolution to be decided on by the legislature. And then so much hinges on what direction the legislature goes on really what Bitterroot College's near future will look like. And if the current college is going to be transitioning to a community college, that puts a certain type of momentum and wind in the sails, and different things are possible for the fall. And if the legislature doesn't do that, then the UM and OCHI have to make some decisions about what the programming vision will be for Bitterroot College immediately and into the future. So we're kind of moving along as if, not exactly as if nothing's going to happen, but just trying to assume we will have this somewhat equal funding for the fall. And, but knowing that that could go either way. We may lose funding in general. We may lose funding because of UMs. We may lose funding because Bitterroot College will not become a community college, and the UM will practice some right sizing, or we'll just simply lose funding because there is a funding crunch with the UM, and or we could gain funding because we're going to become a transition to become a community college. And in that case, I think there'll be some fundraising to support operations through the transition. And then we could see a few things, maybe even starting by fall. Maybe not, but maybe. I think things just, if we get the okay to become a community college, I think there's different momentum from various stakeholders that may affect funding and authority and vision and that sort of thing. So at any rate, we're just kind of moving along and holding and optimistic, but waiting to see how the chips fall.
So I have a question, Tori, about funding. I guess it's indirectly related to the director's report, but it's a UM funding question. I think I saw a week or two ago that even though international student enrollment is up, that UM's enrollment is down again by like 7% or something. Have you heard anything since that announcement about UM's budget plans?
No, I mean, I think what I've heard is simply that we need to conserve resources, and you know, as much as possible through the end of this fiscal year, and whether they actually have to implement mid-semester cuts, that was bantied about, though I wouldn't say I've heard that. It was more just like, well, what are the various things could be done? Well, they could actually institute, I mean, they could do a percentage cut, you know, in March. But again, that was just, you know, let's just look at all options on the table. I know in general that their situation is severe. And I am glad I'm not in the shoes that I'm glad I'm not in the shoes that know the real story, the full story, because I think it's a huge challenge. And I think the university, yes, there's been systemic management problems at the university for some years now. However, COVID, I mean, it was pretty hard to plan for COVID, and the type of enrollment drops that institutions across the nation are seeing. And you know, I don't know really how they can manage without some sort of bailout, but you know, that is way over my pay grade and my professional understanding.
Sure. So before we go on to other directors' report comments or questions, do any of the council members have any other budget related questions about the college or the university? If not, I've got Wendy would like to ask a question about budget, but I was asking council members first.
So I would expect that this probably would be a topic of conversation tomorrow on the Board of Regents meeting. don't you, Tori?
Let's see, the Board of Regents meeting is March 11th and 12th. The task force meeting is maybe what you're thinking of, that we have
Yeah.
tomorrow.
That
It's
you
okay.
sent the last, invitation or instructions out for. I thought that was tomorrow. Maybe I misread it.
And maybe I missent it. That can happen too. Certainly this topic will be, yes, the topic, whenever the Board of Regents meeting is, it will be a huge topic. The University of Montana's fiscal position will be discussed. And I also think on the Bitterroot College, much smaller world of the Bitterroot College task force that is happening with the it will also be discussed with respect to the Bitterroot College and its position moving forward. It is almost impossible that we will not see cuts next year from the I can't imagine that we won't get a cut. I mean, knowing their situation, even just what we know from the papers, it's in the millions. And but on the other hand, I think they're in a position where they got to lob off a limb. They can't just clip fingernails, and we're a fingernail. And whether they're gonna lob off the limb by starting with fingernails, or they're just gonna, take it at the shoulder, I don't know. Or like I said, figure out a bailout. And maybe that is what they're negotiating. And it would be a good investment. It's a good thing to bail out, I think. But again, not privy to that process at all.
Yeah, correct. It is March 11th and 12th. You sent it correctly. I just didn't pay much attention to that. So.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah, Sue.
On this other news about getting some possible iPads and ProBooks, what does GEER stand for?
Oh, I figured someone would ask that. Government, a governor's emergency. Let me look it up and I'll give it to you.
That's okay.
It's the governor's fund. Basically, the federal government gave COVID money. Most of the governors reserved a pool for them, kind of for executive discretion. And this was part of the governor's executive discretion fund. And some went directly to the university system, like they gave 10 million to the university system, and then the university system divvied it up. And then some went obviously to other pockets within the executive branch, one of them being the state library. That was completely out of the blue from John Kilgore, and was like one of those, oh, really? Great. Happy little surprises. And just wanted to give a shout out to him for seeing us and sending us some funding.
Yeah, thanks. I just had no connection as to where the money was coming from and how it got to us. But
Oh,
thanks.
Okay. I know that normally the way Candy runs these is that at the end of the entire conversation, we ask for public comment, but I actually would like to let the public chime in on specific items. And since we have been talking about budget, before we move on from that, Wendy has a comment or question.
First of all, Tori, I love your analogy of the fingernails. That is very, very appropriate and understandable, needless to say. I had two questions and then a comment with regards to the budget. On your FTE, I think 149 or something like that, I'm not sure. What percentage, if any, of that is dual enrolled? Do you know off the top of your head?
none. So that does not include any of our dual. Well, I guess I could say it. The bulk of our of dual enrollment is through concurrent or dual credit. And so what percentage is early college?
Right.
It's
Sorry.
it's very small. I think we only have 2 or 3 early college students this semester.
Okay.
So, but I don't know exact, but I know that even our early college, I mean, everything's down, including our early college.
Okay, so that was the first question I had. And just to, let you know on that end, particularly when students end up, and it really is only in the early college platform, if you end up with students who need scholarships, because at the moment it kind of goes all over the place, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I know, Jamie's been working with us on that, but just letting you know on that front of it. And then also, just because we do work across the state, one of the areas that doesn't appear to be looked at as closely with funding, and I didn't know if you guys were doing this at all, is the issue of scholarships. Because of course, as students feel their own crunch financially, that becomes a big issue. And again, just to reiterate to the board, we have no shortage of funding on scholarships. So, there really isn't any reason why students should be struggling with the financial side of things, other than the fact that they're not preparing. And that, I think, is the biggest point of discussion, and COVID has impacted that. So just, my 2 cents, we need to somehow hit that stronger, because then that brings in funding to the university, whether it's UM or Bitterroot College, but it's outside funding. So it's not the hit internally of we've got to come up with funding for students. It's an outside source. So just.
Excellent point. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Wendy, or was that it?
No, that was it.
Okay. So, continuing with the director's report, any more comments, questions, suggestions, whatever? So I'm going to actually just make a comment about, I stopped this morning at Big Creek Coffee to get a coffee. And I go there once in a while to get a coffee. And one of the people who works there is a young woman who I assume lives here in town. And she had told me like a year ago that she was going to be going to college in Arizona. So, but I've been noticing when I stopped there that she's still around. And so she and I were chatting this morning about college, and she said that, she did take an online class or 2 back in the fall. And that her plan was last fall to go to Arizona. Well, she didn't because of COVID. She took an online class or 2. She decided to not take any online classes this semester and just stay in Hamilton and work. And her plan now is to go to Arizona in August. But she was just commenting on friends of hers who have gone to whatever college, doesn't matter, that pretty much all of her friends told her they thought it was smart that she just not do anything this semester, because students in general say they are not having good college experiences during COVID. That, yeah, they're getting through, and if it's online only, yeah, they're getting the class done, but they're just, at least from the student perspective, they're not having a good experience. So she's really glad to hear that from her friends, that she decided not to go at all this semester. So I guess I was just relaying that in that, it's not just Bitterroot College or U of M, it is nationwide. And, students are having to make some tough decisions about whether they're going to delay going to college or not, and possibly have to do most or all of it online, because it does vary from state to state and college to college.
If I could jump in here with a student perspective, or what I've heard about half and half. It also depends on, I guess, major. I feel like science majors have been a little bit more frustrated, or people who those labs really help. But I've also heard another half of people who say online works great for me. I love this. I haven't put on real pants in weeks. It works great. So I don't know. I've heard about half and half, both things. I know personally it's been working out great for me. I'm a history major with a minor in anthropology, so a lot of my stuff translates really well online. But I do know, I have heard of some people dropping out because it wasn't what they have, what they feel that they really wanted for the college experience.
Hi, it's Elida. So when speaking from the hospital's direction, COVID really affected our ability to take students for clinical experiences. And so we have, of course, filtered through phlebotomy students, imaging students, so students enrolled in the programs in Missoula, nursing students. And from our perspective, or a big driving factor for us was, in fact, the lack of personal protective equipment. That it wasn't that we couldn't or didn't want to accommodate students in their clinical rotations, but with the shortages that occurred last year and continue even into this year, we've had to be rather discriminatory, so to speak, on how many students we take under the wing and allow them that actual hands-on patient care experience. And it's reasonable, according to our materials director, that some PPE issues are going to extend into 2022. And so we're just now phasing in limited numbers of students, being mindful that we are trying to funnel them through settings in which there's not high utilization of the personal protective equipment that we need to reserve for our employed healthcare providers.
That's really interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way at all, but it makes sense. It makes sense.
Any other council members have a comment on regarding online? I'll give you a chance to say yes or no, and then Wendy had a comment about online she wanted to make. Any council members? No? Okay, Wendy.
I really echo what Indy was saying. And I think one of the things that, as we're working with students to promote them into this mode of online learning, which can be very challenging, especially for those that are non-traditional returning or the high school students that we often deal with, I've found it very effective to promote a lot of teachers. So for example, whenever we're promoting writing, I'm always singing Matt's praise and commenting on the fact that, you know, as you are online, the comments that he gives back on your writing assignments is very helpful, and that how reachable he is. And that often makes the students feel very differently, especially if their past experience was, again, looking at a non-traditional student coming from having 100 or 200 students in an initial class. So frankly, the additional marketing on the online as a closer connection to the professors can sometimes be a real benefit. And that might be something for the Bitterroot College to really explore, is how could, in the newspaper or some other format, how could those individual professors and that closer touch, even in this COVID environment, how could that be better promoted, or how could it be placed out there? I know you're doing some of the, you know, on-site classes as well, but just that online, because I think there are some students who love that. And then there's some students who are very hesitant. I think the other place that we tend to have a lot of discussion on is, well, if you're not sure, like again, Terry, thinking about that student who was going to go to Arizona and then didn't, and then decided to do nothing, the conversation with, well, why not try? Why not do 2 weeks? And then if you don't like it after 2 weeks, graciously back out, and here's what it looks like. Because I think a lot of times there's this misconception of what it's going to be like, and the reality can be different. It's not always different. I mean, it is frustrating to get into Moodle and the system doesn't work, et cetera, but you know, we've got some really pretty amazing professors down here. We are a small community, and this in some ways should be an opportunity for people to more jump in than less. So.
Okay. Well, I just thought of something I guess I would add about the, you know, the effect COVID has had, and really the differences in how different universities have handled it. My oldest grandson, I can't believe it, but he's a senior this year in Corvallis, and he has, I think 99% sure decided he's going to go to Butte, and they have a new name, Montana Technological University, I think is their full name now. Anyway, he was over there about 3 weeks ago for a tour, and my daughter took him, and they were both so impressed with not only the staff, but actually it was over the holiday break, with the staff and the couple faculty members he met. And they were explaining how, yeah, you know, there was a time where they had only online, but in general, they've been able to do more than UM or MSU or any larger university. So in some ways, it compares to us down here because they have small class sizes, and even their labs and research and things like that, they have figured out a way to work with students one-on-one, or just maybe 2 or 3 students at a time versus 15 students in a lab. And so they just assured them, you know, don't worry about fall. Our plan is to be back, to be totally, you know, in person. But even if it's not normal, you're probably still going to get lots of in-person time one way or another. And so I just found that interesting. And then just as a side note, of course, you guys all know my background with internships. They really preach to them that at Tech, students are encouraged, I don't know it's required, but encouraged to do at least 3 internships while they're in school, and can start as early as their sophomore year. So anyway, just pretty impressed to hear what I was hearing out of Tech.
So I have a question. In talking about, listening to Wendy talk about support systems and how great the professors are within the system, which I know and I've heard through the community that they're just great. Is there a mechanism by which you have support for those people? And where I'm going with this is, there's those of us in the community that have the skill set, the time, and the energy to put into helping them support, like the sciences. Like for me, it would be nursing. It would be being an outside or a support for the professors to use to help mentor or encourage or counsel or whatever it takes to keep that student involved or bring them along if they're getting discouraged with the online learning. Is there a system set up within BBC that way?
No, not with kind of outside professionals, and that's a really interesting idea, and kind of a mentor sort of potential type program. That's a great idea. I mean, right now, and Matt, you can, and the students too, Rosalie and India can speak to this, but we tend to, when students are struggling, it tends to be something the instructor either can look at themselves, or they send the information on to our advisor, Jamie standard, and Jamie then makes outreaches to the student. But, you know, to have a greater outreach network, especially a professional one, it is a really interesting, and you know, I think that's an avenue to explore.
There's a mechanism by which and the students can jump in here. You know, there's some things that you say and do within the system, within the school system, but there's a lot of times where they just like to talk to somebody who's been there, done that. How did they get through it and where did they go? And so I'm wondering if that might not be a topic that we take a little further, because there are a large number of professionals in this valley that I think would be interested in helping support from that perspective. And so maybe we need to look at that from a Board of Trustees piece as well as from the Advisory Council. What do you students think? You think that would be encouraging, helpful? What do you think?
Well, I'll go first. Unless you're about to, okay. I think it's a really engaging idea. I've always loved at the Bitterroot College the fact that the classes were fairly smaller and that my professors always felt really accessible. That was excellent. But I do like the idea of, if you're curious about a professional experience, to have an easy pathway or exposure to talking with them or seeing what they do, so you know what you're potentially getting into, and maybe being able to dip your toe into several different ponds and see what's really out there, what a day would look like, or yeah, just talk. I think that idea has a lot of merit.
Because, you know, academically it's one way, but when you get out into the real world, it's a whole different picture. So that might help along the way to figure out that picture a little bit better when you all of a sudden are landed where you need to be, and then think, whoa, nobody told me it was going to be like this. Just curious as to if the students think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, I certainly agree with India, and I agree that I believe it would only enhance the experience to have that much more insight, I guess, into the professional world. And I would agree that the college, it being small enough, it's usually fairly, like, you usually have enough accessibility to your professors that they can catch on that something's going on, like you haven't attended classes much or whatnot. But yeah, I just basically agree with everything else that's been said and think that'd be worth looking into.
Matt, what do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I have a curriculum right now, and I think our most populous course offering, which is RIT 101. The curriculum requires students to focus on a community for the entire semester, which means they choose a community they're either part of, want to be part of, interested in, and that is the subject of the different genres of essays they write, including a profile where they have to interview people in the community. Now, I always encourage students to take 15 weeks to explore their potential major and career. I get a lot of buy-in on the medical side from it, but I think this would be a great pairing where we could say, okay, what are you interested in? I could even mandate that the class choose their potential major or career or explore something like that for a community. It would fit well.
Good. Okay, something to talk about.
You know, I mean, I think what Matt just said there, I mean, it's great that he does that. And I think, you know, a number of professors, especially at small schools like ours, are very accessible and encourage, you know, their students to get involved one way or another, and to help them choose a major, to put them in touch with somebody, you know, a business professional in the community. And I think most of us, either on the board or those who work at the college, you know, also can have ideas for students if they're struggling and want to talk to somebody who's actually doing and has been in the career for a while. Besides that, there are organizations that specialize in, excuse me, in some of these things. And I know Wendy, they're at Valley Oak. I mean, I know they help students, you know, give them ideas and pointers on, you know, who to touch bases with, potential employers. So it's not just, you know, Wendy was talking earlier about scholarships, which is one of the great things they do, but they do put students in touch with people who can help them from a, say, a non-academic perspective and talk about careers and things like that.
I think it might be just as simple as, and this put a little bit of burden on Tori, but it might be just as simple as developing a list of people who are interested in being called at any given time for whatever they're used to. So, you know, if they would call me and say someone needed help or whatever, I'd certainly take time to go have lunch or a relationship with somebody to help encourage them all the way, the rest of the way through what they're trying to get through, as a matter of just let them hang out there and do nothing. I know that the professors are great, but you know, they're one of them and how many students, and they don't want to spend their whole life online or talking to students, but there's resources. I just think it's something that we could look at. So.
Okay. Director's report. Anything else on director's report? If not, then should we go back to Dixie? Tori?
Yes, and sorry, India and Dixie had been waiting to be let in, and I finally let them in, and now I just see that Nathan and Jennifer have been waiting, and I just let them in. But Dixie, are you up for your moment in the spotlight?
I'd be happy to go. I apologize that I had some technical difficulties, and then I sat waiting because I didn't know. I called Mary and she told me she got me in. So I wasn't sure whether it was my computer's fault or if I really had to be let in. But I wanted to give a quick report. It'll only take a few minutes, I think, for the report on what Literacy Bitterroot has been up to in 2020. Some of our numbers are not finalized. We have our final report for 2020 to the county commissioners next Wednesday. So our numbers for the people that got employment, that's the hardest one to verify, because as you all know, you know, people don't answer their phones anymore. And so it's a little bit of a challenge to find out. Sometimes I just have to call their emergency contact and say, are they working? So Mary will be working on that. I wanted to say too, it's been really wonderful over the last few months to have Mary Tellen from the college coming in to the literacy program, and we are able to work together, and I'm showing her some things about how to connect with students. And the other day when she was here on her internship, the phone rang and I'm listening. I said, how can I help? And I listen and I listen and I said, just a minute. I think the person that can help you best is right here. And I hand the phone to Mary, because all the questions were how to get back into college and how to finish a nursing degree. And so it was just awesome to have that resource and not have to give somebody a different number or send them somewhere else, but to say, I think the expert on that is right here, but it's not me. So I looked through a little bit the presentation from last month that Monique Cortman gave on the Missoula program. And we do all of the services that Missoula is doing, except they do a boot camp where they do test taking strategies in a group session. And because of COVID, all of our sessions are either individualized or extremely close to it right now. We do some virtual learning. We do face-to-face. Our classrooms do not have more than 3 students in them. We're kind of limiting that because we want to make sure there's plenty of space, and the teacher in Stevensville disinfects the classroom when they come in and disinfects the desks they're going to use. And then when they leave, the janitor comes in and disinfects for the next day. But there's just a few as you all know, a few extra things going on with COVID. We do the HiSET preparation, all 5 subjects, and we do, instead of calling it a HiSET boot camp here, we have a HiSET fast track. So a great example of that would be a gentleman approaching 50 years old who came to me a month ago, and he said, I have a good job. I have a really good job, but I got it through a temp agency. And in order for them to make me a permanent hire, I have to have my credential. And he was just shaking because this means so much. It's so high stakes. And he has taken half of his test and done very well on it, and we'll take the rest of it on Friday. He will be done with his goal in 1 month. So because of the two different testing times to keep them from testing from 7 hours at a time, it does take at least 3 weeks to get someone through. But we've had several people who've come through quite quickly. And because many of you know Bob Carmody, Bob and Linda Carmody were the wonderful team running the Alternative Learning Center for years. I have hired Bob. I hired him in December and he started in January working with students. He is just amazing. I am so glad to have him on staff. He has taken one of our students that I'd actually run through all of the teachers that I had over the years. And 2 weeks, she passed. There was only one test she was lacking, but we had tried almost everything in our toolkit and we could not get her over that hump. And Bob just had the perfect skills to do that. So I just want to say thank you to Tori for reminding me when I was in tears in December and I said I needed more help and I didn't know how to hire during COVID because it's hard to do it the way I used to do it anyway. And I have such a sense for people when I can be in the same space as them. It's really hard over a video to really get to know someone. We also do workplace skills and college preparation, including both the math and writing. On that note, I'm excited to report that our TABE, our Test of Adult Basic Education, has just added a writing section. There's no guidance on it yet. It is not approved for the national reporting system, but since we're funded locally, we can do what's right for the students and we can use new technology before the government decides it's good enough. And we'll try it out, and if it's not good enough, we'll try something else. But I'm really excited. There's 15 multiple choice questions and an essay. And the essay is what's been missing. We do not get a writing sample from the students who take the Test of Adult Basic Education. We do career development, but we do a lot of that by referral to the youth employment program down the hall. I know we've referred more than a dozen students to youth employment in 2020 because we had at least 12 that were co-enrolled. And in the past, a lot of times youth employment would refer students to us. It seems like that's really flipped. People find us first and then we walk them down the hall, or I go get Shane and he comes and talks with them. And it is so nice to be able to take a young person who might be functioning at the 4th grade level in 1 or 2 key subjects and to get them engaged in a program that can put them in a work site and help them be getting a wage for 15 or 20 hours a week. And then they don't feel so pressured and they have more time and focus with their engagement with the educational piece. Our referral and coordination with collaborating partners is very strong. We work closely with the college, we work closely with youth employment, and before they evaporated into thin air, we worked closely with the job service. Now we just point to the phone numbers and people call the job service because they're working at home at this point in time. And so just to go back to the quick report, in 2020, we served 117 students. I should say we enrolled 117 students. There were dozens more that we sent to the right place and we helped them in another way. But people who needed our services and we then enrolled them, there were 117. We had 45 students complete their high school equivalency diploma. Or I should say 45 students who received services in 2020 completed their diploma. There were a couple of them who had completed at the end of December of 2019, but they stayed in the program to do college prep skills so that they could enroll at Bitterroot College. Oh, and I have to say, one of our graduates from November is taking 12 credits at Bitterroot College this semester. I nearly fell over because that's a lot for your first semester at college for people who, well, and English is not their first language and so on. But I'm just so proud that some of our students dive in with both feet right away. So in addition to the 45 graduates, we do know that at least 15 of our clients entered post-secondary education in 2020. This one's a little bit tricky. We try to follow people for 1 year, but with COVID and a lot of people moving and a lot of changes for folks, we weren't able to find everybody, but we were able to determine that at least 15 people went on. Now, I know looking back, we had somebody who went to lineman school, and I'm not sure that got counted because we're looking at our post-secondary partners in the community most closely. We also had 23 students gain employment. And as I looked over the report from Missoula, the one thing that I really noticed was they had how many students they'd served in half a year. The 26 students that they'd served, they had what their goals were, but they didn't have anything about what was accomplished. And we really switched to an entirely performance-based model when we got local funding, because the county commissioners really don't give a hoot how many people sat facing forward, how many hours. They want to know what were the outcomes. And our contract with the county does not include how many hours people sit in a classroom, or that we can document that they were on a computer studying in a program that we gave them access to. Instead, it's all about performance, and our performance exceeded every parameter for 2020 despite COVID. And I just have to say that the students and the teachers really should be applauded. I don't feel like this is my accomplishment. This is the program's accomplishment. And the teachers and the students have really been wonderful. We had one young lady who had a sister who was immune compromised and wasn't allowed to leave the house for 6 months. And we didn't know what to do because she really needed our help. She needed somebody sitting at her elbow. But we managed to send her packets and send her materials, and the teacher would work with her over the phone as necessary. And she would call me when she got stuck. And she graduated in November. And by then, her mom couldn't stop her anymore. She said she'd been wanting to apply for jobs, and mom said, no, you have to do your education first, you got to finish up. Well, the day after she got her education finished, she applied for a job and got it. And just after Christmas, she went full time. And, a lot of the students who get a job right away, that's seasonal, and they get a few weeks of work and then they're out looking again. But I'm just really proud whenever I go into the business she works for and she hollers from the other end of the store, Dixie, and she's just so excited. This is a child who turned 18 the very end of December and had told me when she first enrolled that as soon as she turned 18, she was going to run away and go back to a very dangerous life in a city that she had had before she was rescued and brought here. And now she doesn't want to run away. She wants to earn enough money to get insurance for the car. And I just think it's so exciting when you see people that you have, the odds are stacked against them. And because we're a small program, even with 117 students a year, I was able, when I talked to that student, I then talked to the mom, I talked to the teacher. I said, here's how high the stakes are. She has to be done before the end of December, or we're going to lose her. And she's going to go back to a life that is unspeakable. And we all agreed that we were going to see to it that she got done. Although the teacher said, you're kind of pushing me. I don't know that we can do it quite that fast. And I said, whatever we have to do, we have to do it. And so the transformation in the students' lives is what makes the program alive. And I also am really grateful in many ways that we are not in the same position as other adult basic education programs in the state who are now teaching to the TABE test so that they can show gain on the TABE so they can retain their funding. The TABE test is one of the worst tests I've ever dealt with in my life, even with the new version of the TABE. And don't worry, I've told their their customer service people that too. This isn't news. It's not a very good test. And to base a person's future on that poor of a test and to teach to that test is really a travesty, a waste of tax dollars and a waste of the student's time. Please, what are your questions?
I just want to make a comment. Dixie, you started out by mentioning Mary volunteering for you some this semester as part of her internship. I actually am the instructor of record here at the college for the service learning credit. So we don't call it internship, but it's basically the same thing. And I want to say, you know, thank you for taking on Mary. If you want another student in the future, let me, let Tori, let Jamie, someone know. We have, you know, the more opportunities in the Valley for students to get out and get some volunteer experience, may or may not be related to their professional career goal. But just that experience has been amazing for the students I've worked with so far. It's been all over the board. I've got one student who, although you know, she has a job with an organization, she also is an artist and does things, has a business on the side. And, you know, this person is doing a service learning project of actually working with a nonprofit in the Valley who needed some signs. So this person, being an artist, is working with the organization on that. And, you know, I've had students at nursing homes, etc. The other thing I've been quite flexible on is when I took this over, the syllabus I was given said, you know, that a 5 to 7 page paper was due at the end of the semester. Well, I started having students ask, well, could I do something else? Could I do, you know, an interview? Could I do a presentation at Rotary? And write about that? Could I do a video of my project and interview people in lieu of a paper? So students are getting some great experiences. And so any of you who might know of, it has to be a nonprofit. So theoretically a governmental organization or a nonprofit agency. Although that in itself, and I'll give you one example and then shut up about this, because I'm really excited that we're doing more of these with students. I had a student who worked for a for-profit business, happened to be an accounting firm, and wanted to know if she could, you know, do a service learning. And at first I'm like, well, no, it's a for-profit. And then as she and I sat and talked, I called her boss up and I said, so as an accounting firm, do you have nonprofits here in the Valley that you do their bookkeeping and accounting for? And the owner said, well, yeah. And I said, okay, well, could this student be assigned at least part of their workload to work with nonprofits, and then they could do their project and their paper about the difference in working with for-profit versus nonprofit companies. So bottom line is, it should be a nonprofit, but there might be a way to turn it into, even if it's a for-profit business, if there's some way to legitimately tie in service learning, I'm fine with that.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for correcting me, because I have to admit, it was service learning that Mary was doing, but just last night I signed the paperwork for her internship this semester. So we're kind of doing a little of both, and it was great to do the service learning because it showed me how valuable it could be to have someone from the college here in terms of being able to just communicate and learn about each other's processes and the best way to refer students. And so Mary actually is both just completing service learning and going into an internship. The other thing I wanted to say is, while you were talking about this, Terry, I was thinking back to what Linda said at the beginning. And wouldn't this be a great service learning project for someone to take on, creating a database of willing professionals and their skills that students could then perhaps choose a mentor or someone to get together with without it adding to Tori's plate. I know Tori's plate is pretty full, and I don't want this to not happen. I think Linda's idea is great. So I would just encourage the Bitterroot College to think about whether someone through service learning could kind of get the ball rolling on that project.
So let me chime in on that. I think that's a great idea. I do know, though, that as you said, Tori, I mean, Mary, everybody's very busy here, and, you know, with budget cuts and et cetera. Being that I'm the one who, you know, works with students on the credit aspect, I couldn't necessarily serve as their supervisor, but maybe someone outside the college, whether it be, you know, Linda or Sue or Dixie or someone who was willing to sort of, I'll use the term loosely, supervise a student to put together something like that. Because for the service learning, legitimately, we need a supervisor, we need the student, we need me. So if somebody would be willing to help out the college by supervising a student to do that, I think it'd be great.
I'll do it. My suggestion, I would be glad to supervise a student to do that. So.
Excellent. The other thing I just wanted to mention as I was listening before my presentation is that I'm not sure that all of you know about an opportunity in the community that comes up each fall. And it is a grant, it's a grant application that has to be collaborative. There has to be at least 3 different agencies or nonprofits involved. And it can bring in somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. And it really wants to see transformation in the community, and it wants to see a lot of volunteer activity. And that might be to do some sort of part-time position that would oversee this in the future if it grows and becomes a real successful activity. It might be a good place to go for that money. And also, just because we've got people from the advisory council and the trustees elect here, I just wanted people to be aware of that opportunity. It does require that you have attached minutes that the board of directors of each group has approved the project. So it's not something you can write the night before. Tori and I did look at that last September, but it's not something we can write the night before. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's an opportunity. They used to give, it's the RAP, R-A-P-P, RAP Family Foundation. And they give smaller grants of $5,000 for projects to nonprofits throughout the valley all the time, 3 or 4 times a year. Usually the 4th quarter they give out by their board members' favorite projects instead of an application process. But they give the little grants quarterly, and then in the 3rd quarter, they do the big grants, and they have done 2 or 3 of $25,000 to $30,000 each in the last few years. And I think that's just something that we need people to know about so that we can match. One of the things I've talked about with Mary in her upcoming semester is teaching her to do some grant writing. And I've talked with her about the most important thing in grant writing for success is the match between the funder and the project. If you have a project that you know that funder is going to like, then it's worth a lot more effort than it is if you've got something that no matter how well you write it, they're going to throw it away because it doesn't meet their priorities.
While Dixie was talking, I thought of one other quick example I wanted to give you of one of the students I've worked with the past few semesters. A student whose plan is to get into a nursing program, probably at UM, at college, Missoula College. But, you know, of course, she's been going down here and taking science courses, anatomy, etc. Well, this student volunteers at a search or a fire department in the Valley. And so when she talked to me about service learning and we were trying to think what she could do, her real interest, and because she's interested in going into nursing, was she wanted to update the fire department's medical training. So she wrote a fairly long procedure and training manual for the fire department. She actually did a video as her final project. And her goal, so this goes beyond, and she talked about this in the video, that once she gets her nursing degree, she actually wants to continue to be active in this fire department and put on medical training for all of the paid and volunteers with the fire department.
Cool.
Okay. Anybody, any other comments or questions for Dixie? Tori?
I just want to chime in that, Dixie's, the Literacy Bitterroot is just such a great community resource. Dixie in particular has been such a great partner, and having a staff member go over and kind of get to be embraced by Dixie and her program, and that has made such a difference for us as well. And it just makes me think, after seeing this, like, oh, we all just need to cross train at our partners' workplaces a little bit, because then you appreciate what they're up against, and then you appreciate what they're up against, and also I think we learn how other processes work, and that is really good. In the sense that you can get very stuck in how you do things, and well, we always do it this way, and then Mary might come back and say, Dixie actually approaches it this way, and it makes us small organizations larger, because we can get siloed, not really meaning to be, just because we have a small world, and in our process world, in our system world. And so it just has brought home to me how important it is for staff development, and one way that we can do staff development is anyone that's willing to go and spend some time in another organization, and Dixie has been a great organization to have that with, and I just want to thank her. It's been great for us.
I forgot one thing, if I may. I think some of you may know this already, and I'm sure it's all right with Mary that I say it because she's said it publicly. Mary started here. She came to us and got her high school equivalency diploma and ended up at the college. And so she came full circle. And it's so nice to be able to sit and talk with her about how the students might feel about one avenue or another, because she was a student and she knows what that's like. And she understands the fear and difficulty making that first step. And I think that's really valuable, that she understands how people feel. I can ask questions, and I can read people pretty well, but she's been there. And I think it really gives her a unique perspective, and it makes her especially valuable. And it makes me more likely to take somebody else in the future. But I have to tell you, Terry, nobody will be as good as Mary.
That is true. You started with the best. Yeah. But
so just one other comment, I mentioned earlier, if anybody knows of a project or position for a student, let me, Tori, Jamie know. So students can find these service learning positions. They happen usually one of two ways. Either an employer or nonprofit, whatever, contacts us and says, gee, I have this project, I think it'd be great for one of your students. Probably more often than not, though, it's the student comes to Jamie now and says, gee, I'd like to get some service learning credit. How do I go about this? She puts them in touch with me. And then we just brainstorm about who they know, what their interests are. And then I try to point them in the direction of, you know, nonprofits or the college or someone who, you know, might have a need. So it's either the student developing their own, finding their own, or an employer, you know, coming to us with an idea. So it can happen either way. I guess I would encourage more of the potential employers coming to us and saying, this is what I need, and then we can get the word out to students.
Seems like that might be good, a good like email blast that I could do on our listserv, even to the, you know, does the community really even know that that's an option? I mean, it's like Linda just saying, why not have some professionals that can mentor, be available to students, and you know, just putting out a few emails over the old MailChimp might just get a few more bites. So I'm just writing that down.
Okay.
Lori, also, I think the community management team for workforce development that meets monthly, and they meet, I have a meeting tonight till 8, and then they meet at 9 tomorrow morning. So I've been missing those because I'm not good at back-to-back 12-hour days anymore. I just get all cranky. But anyway, I am going to try to be on the CMT tomorrow, and almost everybody on that is a nonprofit or an agency, a governmental agency. And I'll just remind them that it's been a good experience for our organization, and that they should step up and volunteer to take service learning folks if they have a need that it fits. I mean, almost any of us have a need that it fits if we stop and think about it in the right way.
That's such a great idea. And let them know Terry's email address.
That's fine.
Then we just go right in the right direction, right to Terry. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
fine with you, Terry.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
I would say either me or Jamie, you know, because Jamie contacts me once in a while about, you know, a student looking for something, or a student already has an idea. So either one of us.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Unless anybody has anything else for Dixie, we should probably move on. Does anybody have anything? Yeah, Jennifer.
Okay, there I go. I was just curious, Dixie, how do you get your students to come? Are these all referred to you, or do they walk in, or like how do you get connected with these people that have these service needs?
Usually it starts with a phone call, but about half of our students are referred by other students. So the word is out in the community that we treat people with respect and they succeed when they come here. And so I did have, I had a young lady come in a few months ago. She was in and out in 5 weeks only because she was working 40+ hours and it was hard to get her in to test. And she has already sent me 4 more students, and she finished in November. So it's just really, usually it's parents call me and they say, well, the school said my child doesn't have enough credits, or it's students who come in and they say, I need to see Dixie, so-and-so sent me, and it's always another student. Good question, Jennifer.
I just wasn't sure if you if you had the staff to do outreach, you know, if you were kind of limited on that, kind of like we are, or if you know, if this was just kind of a word of mouth thing. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, 117 students, that's just extraordinary, especially during COVID. My goodness.
Well, and part of it is COVID has kept us from doing what we usually do, Jennifer. Usually we have a new front page newspaper article at the end of August, and one about Christmas time, because we tend to see our big influx when the kids go back to school. and when people make their New Year's resolutions, because those are the times they start thinking about their education.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. Tori, since I don't have a printed agenda here, what's the next item? You're muted. Tori.
You're on mute, Tori.
Can you hear me yet?
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
No.
I'm screen sharing because I lost track as well. Let's see. So we went Dixie council topics.
Yep. Okay, council member updates, task force update.
And with Candy not here, I can just, and Nathan was here, but he had to go. I think you guys saw we shared the task force, Candy and I's comments to the task force homework. And we have a meeting tomorrow to discuss what people had put down for their homework. We did have a document where other folks' comments were compiled with the ones that Candy and I submitted. And essentially I would say that basically we submitted most of the comments. There weren't really anything new that was, anything earth shattering that was added by anyone else in the task force. And right now our last bit of kind of homework for tomorrow, following the initial stab that we took, was to prioritize 10 things that that we wanted to keep, that we wanted to change, that we wanted to make sure we're part of the new situation. Actually, wait, if you don't mind, I'll share that sheet with you guys real fast if you want that level of detail. Hang on just a sec. Let me just find it. I can show you what we're up against in terms of the 10 things that they're asking for. This must be it. Hang on. 10. I'm just going to stop sharing and then reshare the new document. Here it is. And this was how I answered the 10 things. So, and I just put one actually in each. But after looking at the strengths, kind of the SWOT that we were asked to do, then the top 10 things we should keep, maintain, top 10 things we should change, improve, top 10 add, expand, and then top 10 remove, eliminate. And I went with brevity on this and just said we should maintain that we still have that we are the MUS comprehensive, I should have said 2-year education mission vision. I think for me, the task force, if we don't legitimize ourselves in some ways, that really we can't really go after a vision or a mission. Somehow we have to know what we are, whether we're, limited to 10 college classes and we live in a rented, office space, or are we going to be a community college or a campus of the UM or the MUS? So I just was, we need to legitimize ourselves one way or the other. I think that the reason we're going after kind of any and all of this is that we want solid workforce programming. So I focused on that as my expansion. And then what do we want to remove and eliminate? And I said, we don't want to be managed and controlled by a non-local, non-2-year campus. So those were my lists. I'll actually also share Candy's list with you. She was good in that she went a little bit more into the weeds on her list, which is also a good strategy. We kind of went at it both ways, which I think was good. So depending on what they want from Bitterroot College, we got it taken care of. Candy's list, here it is. Hang on, it's coming. Wait for it, as some comedian always says. This must be hers. Candy's list was more in the weeds, but she went into looking at, when we had presented our list documents, we very much got in the weeds. So she pulled out the weeds, well, and put them into her top 10, which I think is an excellent way. I think both of us putting in this in a different way was good. You know, either the 50,000 foot view or, okay, you know, let's check this and keep this and change that and add or expand something else. So I can kind of scroll down this. I know there's a lot to look at and read, but you get a sense of it. So at any rate, tomorrow's our second meeting. I'm just really interested to see the direction it all goes. From how much homework was submitted, I do think Candy and I probably were the most vested in the homework. But we'll see. You know, I mean, again, this is a good exercise, and it's hard to really be, for me to be thinking about spending a lot of time with the task force until we know what the legislature is going to do, because once we know which way the legislature is going to go, then we know which way this task force has to go. But at any rate, at least we're starting the process. So that's a good thing. I don't know if I covered things, any questions on that, etc. Should I stop sharing? You guys good, or should I leave it up?
Yeah, I've read it.
Good. Okay.
Send that out. Can you send me Candy's in the weeds?
Yes, I will. Yep.
And I'm sorry, Tori, did you send copies of that to everybody?
No, that just came out last night. So Candy and I just submitted our kind of our top 10 homework last night, this evening, but I can send that out to you guys. I don't think Candy will care.
That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, my computer just shut down, so I had to come up on a different computer. So sorry about that. I missed what you said.
I saw that you disappeared.
Is Candy going to be able to attend tomorrow?
Yes, I believe so. Yep. I wouldn't go without her. If she doesn't go, we have to cancel. Keeps me just behaving.
So Tori, I have a question. Are there any more updates about the MOU?
This really is in lieu of the MOU. So at some point, the MOU just pushed them to be like, well, it looks like we actually can't really have an MOU because we're all the same thing. Can't have an MOU with yourself. At any rate, it was, which was always a concern. So I would say that the regents approving the community college looming, and the push for the MOU ended up with the task force.
Okay.
Which is, you know, whatever. It's not too late to be at the table still. So we're actually to have an invite at the table. So we're all at the table right now, kind of dancing around it.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this subject from council or from public? And I know Wendy had to leave, so we still have at least Matt and Dixie there.
I will go back and share the agenda. There we go.
Okay. Then hearing none, I guess we're at announcements and documents received.
And no documents received. I will just, I guess it's an announcement, and Terry had brought this up at the beginning before the meeting was official, but just about the new gun legislation that has passed the House and the Senate and is now on the governor's desk. and that it greatly expands whatever it allows guns on Montana college campuses, regardless of policy, of institutional policy, except there may be an exception for local school districts, and that could include community college districts, which is something that I need to check. My understanding is that it did include an exception for local school districts, that they could have a superseding policy. And will that also mean community college districts? I need to check on that. But in general, concealed and open carry, I believe, will be allowed on campuses.
Tori, do you know how many states allow that?
I did look that up the other day, and I don't know it 100% offhand, but it looks like essentially there may be about 10 states that have this law. There are about 10 states that absolutely don't have this law, and then everyone else, it seems to be at a campus or a system discretion, or it's a policy. They could make a policy either way. And so there is some data on what exactly this means for campuses that have expanded the ability for students, faculty, and staff to have weapons on campus. Though I want to say most of that legislation has been enacted within the last 4 or 5 years, and with now a whole year of it being under COVID. So I don't know if the data has a lot of depth, but there are some websites that cover this topic, and I can send some links out to everybody, both the pro and the con, you know, the kind of websites on this and what the issues are that campuses are juggling with.
So I seem to recollect, and I'm not sure if it covers students, but it seems to me like a few years ago, it was a lot in the news about Utah passing something that at least professors and teachers and staff at educational institutions could carry firearms. I don't know about the students though.
Yes, you know, I mean, I can't speak to that. I know for sure that Texas has expansive whatever allows weapons on campuses. I want to say Colorado does too, but for sure Texas was the one I remember being in the news, and it seemed like that was maybe 3 years ago. But I do have some websites that I've been looking at, and I can forward that to folks. And the governor has not signed this legislation yet, and you, depending on, you know, how you feel, good, bad, or ugly, you know, we would encourage folks to, if you feel strongly about this, to contact the governor's office, email him. There's a phone number or you know, his email address that speaks to this issue directly that you can respond to if you go to his website.
Any other comments, thoughts, questions on that? Okay, new business.
None from me.
Gee, it's only not quite 11:30. Is everybody tired?
I zoomed out.
Yeah, it's a light up. Hey, listen, Tori, I would just like to thank the college for being amenable when we were looking at a site for the mass immunization clinic, the COVID-19 clinic that we did this last weekend. We did approach Bitterroot College as a potential site, and we steered away from it largely because of concerns about parking. And so that's why we ended up moving it over here to the hospital out of one of our clinics. But just wanted to thank you for offering to be a site, and certainly as vaccination supply improves, you're on our radar. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Elida. Yeah, I know we do have a parking issue. There's no doubt about it. But I will also just like a shout out to the hospital. I have just been hearing a lot of people are getting vaccinated, and you guys have a good website up on getting appointments. My husband has gotten vaccinated, so at any rate, thank you for Mark Staley stepping up to the plate and being there for our community.
Well, I would certainly ask anybody on this group that if you hear comments that you feel would be helpful or constructive to us as far as our processes are concerned, you can just pass them on to me by email, and then I will get them on to the right person to address. Okay?
Wow, thank you.
So I was a participant in that mass inoculation process that you had. I've been through many of those, but I can tell you that I was overly impressed. I've never seen anything as well run as that was. And I have to give kudos to the whole community for getting together and doing this. I've talked to several people in several different states, and they are so discouraged about the chaos around just getting on list and being able to get in, being able to get their injections, and they don't know where to go or to turn. So I have to tell you, Bitterroot Valley far exceeds the gold standard, I think, for pulling this off the way they did. And it was, in my opinion, there may have been a little hitch or glitch along the way, but from a person who's done this before, it looked flawless. It was great.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It was a great community initiative, and we were really pleased to work with the pharmacies, with providers from other medical clinics. We had people from the city of Hamilton, from Western Montana Mental Health. Not that they were here to do mental health screenings, although that might have been the desire of some people that day and the chaos, but it was just such you're right, a huge undertaking, and this community just came together, and that's, I think, one of the things that we can certainly shout out about. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
So Elida, I was just going to comment that, you know, the people I've talked to who have been able to get it so far, you know, my wife and I are in 1C or whatever that is. So we're not 70 yet and not high risk. So we haven't got it, although we're on the list. But I've heard, you know, very good things from neighbors who, you know, were on the list and were able to come down and participate. I only heard one negative. I have no idea because I wasn't there, but I'll just pass this on. One set of neighbors, they thought the process went well. They were on the list. They got called. They went down. They said they were probably only there an hour. Their complaint was that there were so many people, there was no way you could social distance. So they said, we sure hope the vaccine takes effect quickly.
Well, a couple elements up front. When everyone was called for their appointment, there was screening that was done in advance to ensure that people would not be coming to this clinic while ill. And we do know that, of course, there's still a fairly large percent of people who have COVID and are asymptomatic. However, the incidence in the community has definitely come down. We also have found the evidence is pointing consistently to the value of masking by two people, even when they're in close proximity to each other. If one person has COVID, that masking, that face covering is highly effective in reducing the risk of transmission. We did encounter some serious safety concerns because we're in 10-degree weather, and this is a very frail population. To ask them to sit in their cars and wait wasn't necessarily feasible because of the continued snowfall. And so we made the decision that instead of having them snaked down the street in the cold weather, that we just altered our line and came in through Hamilton OBGYN, the Bitterroot orthopedic entrance, snaked them down the hallway. You know what, if it weren't 10 degrees and snowing, we probably could have done things entirely differently. But we really had to make a spur of the moment decision about what was in the best interest and welfare of the frail population that we were serving that day. And so, yes, we've heard a few people express that concern, but I will circle back to the fact that we have staff here at the hospital who are in very close proximity to people with COVID, and the masking makes a huge difference in reducing that risk of transmission. So offer them my reassurance, but certainly if they feel they need to speak to anyone directly, you can send them our way.
You know, I'll just personal experience, and I realize, maybe it's I don't know why this didn't happen. Let me put it that way. Back during Thanksgiving, my daughter, who lives locally, she and her husband and 2 teenage grandsons were at our house all day for Thanksgiving. And eating, cooking, cleaning, watching TV together, hugs, whatever. Probably early in the day, a couple of them are like, boy, I hope I feel like eating. I'm not feeling great. And so anyway, bottom line is we spent all day that day together, and actually a little bit on Friday after Thanksgiving. By Saturday, all 4 of them were sick. They got tested. All 4 of them had COVID. Here, my wife and I are in our mid to late 60s. We never got it.
Mm-hmm. There's no telling, and that's pretty consistent. We're monitoring the side effects that people have been reporting from the vaccine, and it is all over the place. Tell some of you that for me, first dose, soreness at the injection site. Second dose, it was like 18 hours to the minute, and I said, I have got to lay down and take a nap. Ran a low-grade fever, kind of some aches and pains, and then it was gone within 18 to 24 hours. And we are seeing people who don't have any side effects whatsoever from the vaccine. But I think the important thing is that thus far, the Pfizer and the Moderna are highly effective at preventing COVID-19. And if you do get it, they are not seeing the severe illness that they are seeing in unvaccinated people. And so the vaccine, both vaccines, and of course Johnson & Johnson is going to the FDA to get emergency use authorization for their vaccine. It's not quite as effective. I believe they said it was coming in around 88%, but that's only 1 dose. And so I can see the Johnson & Johnson vaccine probably being used to connect with those communities in which people coming back for that second vaccine may be more challenging. So it's coming. I just, yeah, it's been a whirlwind since December when we first got the vaccine. And again, for those who don't know, Bitterroot drug and Corvallis drug are now receiving Moderna vaccine through the federal retail pharmacy program. And so they are receiving at least 100 doses a week. So there's additional resources, public health, ourself, Sapphire is periodically getting vaccine. I don't anticipate that we'll have a big event like this again. This Pfizer vaccine was the surplus from the initiative for the long-term care facilities and assisted living. But boy, what a way to knock it out of the park. Did almost 1,000 people. Yep.
So I have a question. Because we had the first one, the event, how do they stage making sure that you get the doses for the second shot comes in timely, I guess, meet the dates that's on your second dose card?
What happens here is we receive a notification on Saturday that dose ones or dose twos are being shipped, and they typically arrive here on Tuesday. And so it has just been happening automatically. We've not had to submit a separate request for those second doses. They are in the system, and we have not had any issues with receiving that second dose.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good, thanks. That
Yeah.
helps.
So March 6th, you just come the same day or the same time that you came in for dose one. And it'll be a much more efficient process. We won't have the registration piece to do. And so people will probably actually be out of here a little more quickly.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Anything for the good of the order? Well, then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sue's waving, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Everybody have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you next month.
Okay.